the Amber Alert Podcast.
Welcome back, Amber Alert Podcast, episode 117, part 2. I am your host, Amber Starkey. It is a great day to be alive. Let me get, what's this one, Instagram going, and we will be set to get into part 2, which, like I said, in part 1, I will issue this disclaimer again in case anyone was not in part 1 and is in here now. It's disturbing. It's gross. In my opinion, it's evil. So I'm not coming at it to draw anyone to the evil. Honestly, it's to expose it, because I think it just feeds into the larger deception that's happening around us. That's been happening, but seems to be only increasing as we march closer and closer to the end. If you pay attention to Bible prophecy, it's like, to be honest, I don't know how people deny it. I genuinely don't. I don't think if you're an honest person and you just look at facts, you can deny it. It usually, if people deny it, it's because they don't want it to be true, because they are mad at God. They have some kind of bias against it, which, people have things to work through, and that's sad and unfortunate, but things are unfolding like the Bible says they're going to. So what a time to be alive. Now, that being said, one of my favorite, I don't know what to call him. He's an author, he's a researcher, he's a filmmaker, Dr. L.A. Marzulli, he's probably the first person I go to when it comes to the subject of, aliens, of all kinds of high strangeness. Doesn't matter what the subject is. It could be sightings of what we call cryptids, that people swear up and down. They're like, I know what I saw. I'm not crazy. I smacked myself in the face. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't high on LSD. Like, I saw something. I'm telling you what I saw. So I don't think that all of those claims can be dismissed, that the person's insane, the person's nuts, the person's lying. In fact, Marzulli has a lot of people on who he interviews, and he does vet things. He doesn't just believe everything that people come at him with. In fact, I've watched him. He used to do this show, and he may bring it back. I don't know if he's done with it, called Questions with L.A. Marzulli, where people would write in and people would send in pictures. I think this is a UFO that I saw. And he debunks them in the show all the time. He's like, you can't say that's a UFO. So he's not like, he takes things seriously and vets things, but he doesn't just accept every story that people share with him. But I respect him because he's a born again, spirit-filled Christian and has a biblical worldview and is well-versed in Bible prophecy. So that's that's the lens through which he interprets what he is seeing and what's happening in the world around us, which is exactly how I am. So everything gets tested against the Bible. And if it can't stand up, here's the thing. I don't have to be able to find a verse that word for word tells me what something is. But if it doesn't, it needs to not violate scripture, because the Bible is it's not a book full of every fact that we will encounter in life. Okay. The Bible didn't say my name in there and then what my married name would be, and then the address I would live at. Like, it's not that, but there's a general rule of thumb. If something, you test it against scripture, and if it does not violate scripture, it doesn't contradict it, it doesn't cause problems throughout the entire arc of scripture from Genesis to Revelation, then that's where I then make room for something. So the subject today, which I said would be gross and disturbing, is about what the little, I have to say aliens, because that's just what everyone is used to calling them. Everyone knows what you're talking about when you say aliens. The little alien grays, okay? And I should have probably included a picture. I didn't think to. But basically everyone has seen them depicted. They're small. They're 3-4 feet tall, maybe, oftentimes with 4 fingers, big black eyes, a weird shaped head, 2 little nostrils. I don't even know if they have ears, maybe just holes, and then a kind of like a slit for a mouth. And so that's, in fact, I think the most common depiction that you see when people are drawing or animating aliens. Now you see green ones too, and I don't know what that's about because I don't know any stories of green ones really. Maybe one person said they encountered one. But the funny thing is, she's a Christian, and she looked at it. This was I actually love her. I listen to her husband about every day, and I love her too. She went outside with her dog, which was a big dog. I think they had like a mastiff or something. And she walks around the corner, and there she said was a little greenish alien. And she's like looking at it, and her dog is reacting, not going after it, but it's like upset, and she's like, I don't know what this is, but it's evil. So she's like, in the name of Jesus, get. And the thing went. But that, that's beside the point. Usually when people, so there's a whole thing about alien abductions, right? And before I ever listened to L.A. Marzulli or bothered to look into the whole narrative, I dismissed it. Like when I was a kid, I was like, dude, people who think aliens are real are nuts. And then they're even more insane if they think they've been abducted by them. Like you need to be in a psychiatric hospital. You need to be like chained to a bed. You're nuts. That's what I used to think. But the truth is, if you look at the subject, if you actually will listen to people who are interviewed and they talk about what they experienced, you will find there's a pattern that applies to people from all different parts of the world, different ages, both genders, different cultures, different languages they speak. And there's so much overlap. Things like it's always the little grays, which is why I'm starting with them. They come in your room. It's almost always your room. Not always, but that's common. They come in the room somehow through the wall or something. They just come in. Like they don't use the door like a person. They come in the room. They wake you up. If there's someone next to you in the bed, they're like knocked out. They're like switched off. You could even shake them. They won't wake up. They're not dead. They just won't wake up. So they come get you. And then, and here's the thing, people who said they've had it happen enough times, they know when it's coming. There's like a frequency or almost like a vibration / a buzzing sound that they know that's the signal. It's coming. I'm going to be taken again. And so that happens. And then when they're taken, they also like go through a window. They either go through a closed window or the window opens on its own, which we know, according to the laws of physics, in our 3D world, the earth that we live on, that is impossible. However, I will say this, in Acts chapter 12, I believe it is, when Peter is in prison, it says the angel comes and he strikes him on the side. He hits Peter to wake him up. So we're talking about an angel, which we, consider to be somewhat ethereal, meaning like not physical, more of spirit and not like physical, like biological material that makes up that angel. However, it hit him. So there's something physical that hit Peter, woke him up, and the angel's standing in the cell. So how did he get in the cell with people there? Because I'm pretty sure it says Peter is sitting between two guards and he's in shackles. So the guards don't wake up. Sounds like they don't do anything to stop it. The angel is somehow in the cell, and then the things fall off. And then when they go to leave, the iron gate opens of its own accord. So the reason I'm saying that, I am not likening holy angels to these little gray aliens that abduct people, but I am simply saying that angels are a spiritual being, which in this case is they're holy and they're good and they're of God, of heaven and earth, but clearly they're able to interact with people in the physical realm, and they're able to make a gate open on its own while people around them don't know what's going on. Because even Peter didn't know what was going on. He thought he was seeing a vision until he's outside and this is real. And the angel's like, yeah, go. Like, so it's obviously not impossible is my point. So Christians, that's ridiculous. No, it isn't. Read your Bible. It's not ridiculous. It had something very similar happened in the Bible, except no one was being abducted. Someone was being let out of prison who shouldn't have been in prison, right? One of God's servants. So Anyway, back to the abduction. So they go through the window somehow. And then even things like physical marks on their bodies, internal injuries, even is standard across many different accounts. Alien implants. Dr. Roger Lear took out like 16 or I don't know if he actually did it. He may have been an attendant to some of them, but he was involved in 16 or 17 explant surgeries, and they don't know what they were. They were in this story. If you're like, no, that's bull, I promise you, you can easily find Dr. Roger Lear's story and alien implants. He's dead. He's died in, I think, 2014, but you can find it. They don't know what they were, is the point. They were coated in something that they thought was some kind of material that would make the human body not reject them. That's conjecture. But the metal, even, I'm pretty sure they tested it, and it's like, it doesn't match any metal that we have on Earth. So they were like, we don't know what these are or where they came from, but they happen to be coming out of people who claim to have been abducted by aliens. So you tell me. That's actually what got Roger Lear on the subject, because I think he was a podiatrist, and he had if I remember correctly, how he got his start, he had a patient who had foot pain. And so they did like scans and found there's something in your foot. No wonder you have this discomfort and pain. And so when they took it out, he was like, what the devil is this? And so I think they had sent it to a lab in maybe Canada or something. And he was like, I don't know what that is. Nobody can explain what it is. So then, he asked the patient, what is this? What happened? And the patient then tells him, I was abducted by aliens. And Dr. Roger Lear's like, well, something real was in your foot. So now I have to listen to your story, even if I think it's crazy. And so then he went on to hear other people's stories and deal with other implants. Some people didn't want theirs taken out. Some people did. L.A. Marzulli has a guy, Emil Jurek, in one of his films on the whole abduction scenario, and he had an implant that I believe they took out. And he was taken from the time he was like 5. So the point is that there's physical evidence that does support the stories people tell. And so if you want to deny the whole thing, then you got to deal with the physical evidence too. So what exactly are the little grays that come and get them? So the common narrative is that they're aliens, which I don't believe. First of all, just, the Bible says you'll know them by their fruit, or a tree is known by its fruit. So if you see bad fruit, you're dealing with a bad tree. So kidnapping people is bad behavior. So these aren't nice, friendly, good, or holy alien beings. If they're abducting people, they're implanting them against their will. And to say nothing of the reproductive part of the conversation, which is arguably the worst part, where when people are taken, again, this is another commonality between across stories, that people end up on a metal table. Experiments are done to them. Men have sperm taken, women have ovum taken. So they're obsessed with the reproductive organs of people. And then there's the missing pregnancies, which Brett Baer from Fox News did a show on this, or a segment years ago. It may have been like, I don't know. It could have been anywhere from 2016 to 2019. I don't know. But they did a show on missing pregnancies, because people, again, who claimed to be abducted by aliens found themselves pregnant. And then in the 3rd month, they're taken again, and then the fetus is just gone. So they then go back to the doctor, and the doctor's like, we can't find any fetal tissue. Are you sure you were ever pregnant? And they're like, yeah, because I had it confirmed. There was a heartbeat and the ultrasound, right? So there's a reproductive element to this, which is not really the point of today's show, or whatever you want to call it, but that's a whole thing that exists. So when we talk about the gray aliens, let me pop up this picture of Karen Wilkinson, since we're on the subject. So this woman, she is now a Christian. She was not when the abduction started for her. Her name's Karen Wilkinson. And she was taken from the time she was very young, maybe 6 years old. And it was a regular thing. She was a person who got pregnant 3 times, but at this point she was married, and she just assumed it was her husband. But then she's taken again in the 3rd month and the fetus is gone. And she's one of the people who said, they could not find anything in me to indicate I was ever pregnant. So she wrote this book, which I haven't even read it yet. I should. It's called Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. I think L.A. Marzulli has published it, so you could go to his website if you want the book, because I think it is a little bit difficult to find. I would pray over yourself before you read the book. That's what she says. She's a Christian, but she's like, it's very dark, because she details what she lived through for years. The missing pregnancies, the whole breeding program, which again, for people who think that's nuts, if you believe the Bible, that happened in Genesis 6. There was a literal breeding program between fallen angels and the daughters of men, human women, and that's what produced the Nephilim, the giants, which were not human. They were evil hybrids, and they were huge for whatever reason. So we, unless you want to go with the Sethite theory, they weren't actually fallen angels. When it says sons of God, it meant men. No, it didn't. It's B'nai Ha-Elohim in the Hebrew, which was always used to describe angels, something divine. So it wasn't men, and the Sethite theory wasn't even invented until the 4th century. So no, it was not. But anyway, so Karen is one of the people who I believe when she's been on the record with Marzulli, and then she writes about crazy stuff in her book, which again, I would just pray over yourself before you read it, because it's disturbing. But she's one of the ones who talked about that she thinks the little alien grays are not actually, like, that's not actually what they look like, but she thinks that it's more of a biological suit. And I'll explain that. So the reason why is I can't remember the exact wording, and it may be in the book. She either said she saw them hanging up like you would hang up a coat or something. It was either that, or they saw them folded like sweaters or draped over a chair like you would like a coat. So it seemed to her that these are actually suits, and not like, that's not actually like the skin of some type of alien being. And so then if it's a suit, what's inside the suit? And that's where I think it's a demon. And this is a theory. So if you disagree, that's totally fine. It's a theory. But given what she said, and other people have said the same thing, that they've even they smell like rotting flesh, which is why I say this is going to be gross. So if they are suits, what are they made out of? And that's sort of what I'm going to get into is, are they made out of human components? Like some sick Dr. Frankenstein type stuff, or we were talking about scary movies the other day, and the scariest movie I've ever seen is Jeepers Creepers, because I genuinely believe those movies are evil. But in that movie, please don't watch it for the love of God. It might open a portal to hell in your house. Like, those movies are awful. I don't know why I watched them. I wish I could unsee, but there's like this demonic, whatever he is. He's not like the devil. He's just like some demonic, like, being that's shaped like a person. And the movie starts with I think it's a brother and sister are driving down this like kind of isolated road, and they see what they think is a man, and it looks like he has a dead body that he's like dumping. And so they drive by and they're like, and then he turns and looks at them, and they're like, was he dumping a body? And you know what's actually interesting about that movie is the guy who wrote the script, I think he was a pedophile, which, of course, because that movie sucks, but he went to prison for something with a 12-year-old. So anyway, there was a true story in the state of Michigan. I think the guy's name was like Dennis Depew or something like that. And what happened and that truly happened in Michigan is an old couple was driving down the road, and they see a guy, and it looks like he's disposing of some bloody human, like, body part or a body in a sheet, and he saw them see him, so he got in his van and he chased them, and then he eventually gave up. But they went back and investigated and found it looks like that person's like a serial killer or something. So then they ended up finding out he was like disposing of his wife's body. I don't think he was a serial killer, but they had gotten divorced and they got into a big fight, and I think he hit her, and then she like fell down the stairs and she was like almost dead, so I think he just like finished her off or something like that. So then he realizes they found, oh no, they figured out I murdered my wife. So then he goes on the run. He like went to Texas, lived under a different name for like 2 years. And then they did an episode on, I think, on Unsolved Mysteries. And he was living with a woman and he didn't want her to see it, but she ended up like realizing he's trying to keep her from seeing it. So she watched it and figured it out. Oh my gosh, that's the guy that's like living in my house. So he goes on the run. They eventually caught up with him. And I think he killed himself before any kind of trial. But anyway, so the point is the beginning of that movie, I think, was taken from that true story that happened in Michigan. Now, in the movie, so because that's the thing, the brother and sister that are driving, they go back to investigate because like it looked like he was jumping a body. Let's go back and see. So they go down. It's like underneath a church, and this is so disgusting, and it like makes my skin crawl. But when they look up, they see bodies of people that this creature had killed. They're like formed in like the ceiling, which is like under a church or something. And I think in the movie they describe it as a psycho version of the Sistine Chapel. And so the reason I bring that up is to get back to the alien grays. If they are in fact biological suits that a demon inhabits, then they have to be made out of some type of biological material. So is it human? And the reason I bring that up is if you have a demonic movie like Jeepers Creepers and you see someone making artwork out of human people, and that's the thing too, is everyone knows about Frankenstein. I've read the book. I don't know why I read the book. Everyone's at least seen the movies. So which is funny, it's not the monster in the book is not named Frankenstein. Dr. Frankenstein is the doctor who makes the demon. I think it's called the demon in the book, if I remember. He makes this creature, and he grabbed material from cadavers. He's grave robbing. And also in the book, it doesn't show this in the movies, but in the book, Mary Shelley is the author. She wrote about animal parts as well. So it wasn't necessarily only compiled from human people. But the point is, he stitched it together and he made a person, right? But this thing, and here's the thing, in the book, which the movie shows it too, that it's a bad thing that he did, right? Not only is he playing God, but like you created something evil, right? So it's not like she was writing it to encourage people to do it or see it as a good thing. But the point is, it's a dark, evil thing that took place from an idea from hell, in my opinion, and it created something evil. So when you look at these little grays, if they are in fact whatever suit they are in, and I'll get to how I think this could happen, where did the idea, what is the origin of this thing is my point. If you're going to like take human flesh or even animal parts and create something biological that God didn't make, that's the fingerprints of the devil, in my opinion, because he does not have creative authority or power. Satan can't create anything. He can only manipulate what's already there. He can only corrupt what's already there. He can only take what's already been created and twist it, and like a Dr. Frankenstein or a sick demonic entity from Jeepers Creepers, like puts, or human centipede, you could throw any of that, even other stories like the let me just put them up because I have them. This is one of them. The Island of Dr. Moreau. This book, I think they've made multiple movies off of this. This is another one about a doctor basically doing like Frankenstein type stuff, taking people and trying to make more people out of other people. This is another one. The H.P. Lovecraft movie, The Reanimator. Same thing. You have an insane doctor trying to like a lot of other people. So to me, that's, and then you have people like Lady Gaga, who's not even shy about doing like Satanism. Remember years ago, it may have been like 2009, she showed up to some awards show or something, and she was wearing like a meat suit, like a dress made out of actual meat. Even her shoes were meat. which is just it's evil, is my point. So if these grays are biological suits, then you have to wonder where the genetic material came from. It could be multiple things. You have kids going missing all over the country. And I know there are pedophiles who are paying big money for them. Trafficking is a thing. But does that account for all of them? Or has somebody made some deals where, oh, you need human flesh? Here, some kids can go missing. Same with the people who go missing in state and national parks all the time, thousands of people every year. And then you have the whole cattle mutilations conversation, which is very disturbing as well. If you don't know what cattle mutilations are, they've been reported since, I don't even know how far back it goes, but you can find, I think I did a short video on it, and I know I've done an episode on it. You can find newspaper articles. So what they are is you have a rancher or a farmer who has a cow, or could even be a goat, but it seems like it's usually cows. And they get up in the morning and their cow's dead. But it's a weird death. The eyes are gone, the tongue is removed, organs are removed with surgical precision, almost always drained of all. There's not a drop of blood on them. It's surgical precision, very clean. There's no disturbed ground around them. You can't find tire tracks. You can't find footprints. They don't eat, and they take the reproductive organs oftentimes as well. No scavengers will typically go near them, and neither will the other cows. They herd away and huddle together away from the carcass. And some of them even have like a crater underneath the carcass, almost like it was dropped from up high. So they call in, the police and a vet oftentimes, and they don't have answers for it. They've come up with different theories. Maybe this was a satanic cult. Maybe it was somehow did die by wild animal, yet there's no blood. The injuries and the cause of death is just not like consistent with what a wild animal would do. They've also picked up like radiation, which doesn't make any sense. So I think cattle mutilation, and Marzulli, I think, was probably the first one to put this theory together. He believes the cattle mutilations are directly tied in with the abductions and the breeding program, because you can take bovine blood or cow's blood. You do have to do some treatment to it, but it can be used in human transfusions. And so he believes that when they mutilate these cows, and they take the genetic material from them as well as the blood, they're actually creating artificial wombs, because if you are pregnant and then your fetus is taken 3 months in, it can't live outside of the womb. So it's got to go into some kind of artificial womb or a gestation tank. And this shouldn't sound crazy, because they're already making robots that have an artificial womb. So it's not crazy. Unless you don't know about that, and it's first you've heard of it, it sounds crazy. But if you look, I promise you can find it. So, and then also then the genetic material too, not just for the artificial wombs, could maybe contribute to these suits. So if a demon, why would a demon need a suit is a question people have. Well, it depends what you believe a demon is. So the Bible doesn't actually tell us where they come from or what exactly they are. We know angels are created. The Bible does tell us that. And then we know how fallen angels came about, because they rebelled with Satan, right? He took 1/3 with him when he was kicked out of heaven. 2/3 remained. So you have fallen angels, and we get that. They were good angels at one point. They rebelled and sinned. But it does not give us the origin story for demons. So this is a theory. Many people believe the Nephilim, which were the giants, right? They were like I said earlier, the offspring of the daughters of men, human women, and then the fallen angels. They had a sexual relationship. If you think that's impossible, go read Genesis 19, because that's the story of Sodom getting lit up and burned with fire and sulfur and all that. But before that happened, it says 2 men, but it was actually 2 angels. Genesis 18 describes them as men. Genesis 19 tells us they're angels. they go to the city and they go to Lot's house, and the all the gay dudes in the city bang on the door, let them out. We're trying to hook up, Lot, let them out. And he's like, no. So then the angels pull him in the house and they strike him with blindness. And then the city gets destroyed after Lot and his family are safely removed. So it's interesting that there, and lots of people will read that and they'll say, well, the city was destroyed because of homosexuality. That was a factor, but I don't think that was just it, because what it was, oh, sex with angels again? If you're God and you saw what happened in Genesis 6 and what that created, the Nephilim, and I'm going to get to demons, and then you flood the earth and kill them all, but then they come back after the flood, the Bible tells us. And then we go to Sodom and they're like, oh, angels, let's have sex with them. God's like, not again. Burns the city. Anyway, so when the Nephilim died, whether the ones in the flood or the ones that came back after, that actually the thing about it is Israel was then tasked with wiping them out. Remember, God, because they came back again, but God couldn't flood the earth again because he promised he wouldn't. So what does he do? Just let them exist? Let them coexist? No. He tells Israel, when you make your way into the land I've given you, kill all of the inhabitants of the land. And it was one race of giants after another. You had Goliath and his brothers. You had the Anakim, the Rephaim, all of these. I think there's 30 some different like races of giants that are mentioned throughout the Old Testament. So God's like, God, and there's no mercy. Either God likes genocide or he's like, go kill that corruption of my creation. I did not make them. It was never in my plans for humanity for them to get corrupted by fallen angel DNA and then create an evil hybrid, which isn't even human and made in my image. So go wipe them out. So what happened to like the spirit of the Nephilim after it dies? And that's what I believe demons are. I don't think they're created, but I think they're essentially, it's like the disembodied spirit of the dead Nephilim. So they don't have a body unless they get into one, which is why they're always looking to possess a person. And so in the case of the Greys, if they're biological suits, then the demon, in order to do what the demon wants to do, it needs to get into a body. And if there's not a person, well, at least here's a suit. So now you can go do physical things that we are having you do, probably at the direction of fallen angels. Because also, too, people who say they've encountered these little Greys and they've been taken by them, they seem to be kind of robotic and not mechanical, but like just not super expressive, kind of robotic, like they're the worker bees type of thing. They're under the control of something else, which would make sense if they're assuming there's a hierarchy. We know angels, you have archangels and then you have angels. So there's a hierarchy there, which would make sense for there to be a hierarchy for the fallen ones or the evil spiritual beings as well. So then that would explain then why people say they smell rotting flesh. They smell like something's decomposing. Everything about them is not good. The only time you'll hear someone say that they're good is in the case of like, well, Dr. Stephen Greer, but his problem is he's in the new age. So like people like that, they channel spirits and they think that they are some, like they're the Pleiadians or they're some type of ascended masters, but they don't know. You're being fed information by demonic spirits, and they masquerade. They're liars. They're deceivers, and Satan himself masquerades as an angel light. They can look like something that they're not to get you to interact with them. That's what a familiar spirit does. Act like someone the person knows, and then end up. I just knocked over a guitar, but it didn't fall to the floor, so that's probably good. At least now it'll stop strumming when no one's touching it. That was freaking me out. What was I saying? Oh, familiar spirits. Actually, that happened to a kid at my church. I call him a kid, but he's a guy. He went to prison. I don't mean to go down this, but since I brought it up, he went to prison at 18 for selling drugs. and he did 5 years. So he gets out, he's 23, and he had a baby with his girlfriend, and then she got really bad postpartum depression and she took her own life. So he's like super depressed, lost his girlfriend, has a newborn baby. He's already done 5 years in prison on top of his very rough upbringing, and he missed his girlfriend and stuff. So he had gone to a medium, some type of witch, and was like, I want to like contact my girlfriend or whatever. So she did some kind of witchcraft, and he said after he went to her and goes back to his house, or him if it was a male, I don't remember. Anyway, goes back to his house, and he says the next thing he knows, this presence shows up, and it seemed like it seemed familiar to him. It seemed like it was his girlfriend. So he said he interacted with it, and he said next thing he knows, it started to turn evil, and it started to torment him and scare him to death. And it got so he was being tormented and terrorized in his own house. One night it got so bad, he grabbed his kid and his dog and he ran out of his own house in the middle of the night. And he was like, this thing is evil. I need it out of my house. I can't even live here. So he went to a church, and this would have been in the Pittsburgh area. And he talked to the pastor, and he's like, sorry, we don't believe in that stuff. Like, I think you're nuts, basically. So he got no help, which is very sad. So then he went to a Catholic church, and they were like, oh, we believe in all that, but they didn't help him either. And then he ended up at my church, and he gave his life to the Lord in a meeting, and then all of that got dealt with. And I see him pretty much every week now. I think he's got a new person. In fact, I think they're married with a baby last I saw. So he's doing great now. Praise God. Anyway, familiar spirits. So that's the whole point. The people that channel spirits, no, I'm sure it's a Pleiadian. I'm sure that it's an ascended master. Yeah, you think that because they're liars. Where was I going with that? Biological suits, demons go into the bodies. I don't remember. Anyway, so I brought up those books, and many of which have been made into movies and TV shows. And the reason why is I understand everyone has an imagination, and an imagination is not a bad thing. It's been given by God, provided it's not bad, provided it stays submitted to God, right? Otherwise, your imagination can turn you into a serial killer. It can turn you into anything if it's left unchecked, and the influence of the devil comes in. You can turn into something you never expected to be. I actually I used to love the show Criminal Minds. Like, I literally saw every episode I'm talking about the OG show, because I know they've made newer ones in the last 10 years or so. I'm talking about the original ones. I saw every episode. And then a few years ago, I was like, you know what? I loved that show. I'm going to watch it through again. And I got convicted. And I don't think the show itself is necessarily evil. But the point is, if you keep taking that in, where it's one serial killer after another, one sick sadist after another, a serial rapist and murder, like, you keep consuming that content, input equals output, eventually that's going to have an effect on you, no matter how much you try to like not take it in. So you're better off just not taking it in. So I couldn't watch it. Same with another show that I loved. Actually, 2 times I tried to watch it and got convicted and couldn't finish it. And it was an interesting show. So the point is, because that stuff gets into your imagination. And then if it doesn't stay submitted to God, boom, it goes nuts. So when people wrote these books and wrote these stories about making humans out of other humans, or even out of animal parts, where do you think the inspiration for that came from? I don't think it was just a person with their imagination with no influence from the devil. In fact, look at Hollywood. I mean, look at those people who write the scripts and stuff. Pedophiles, Satan worshipers. So where do you really think the inspiration's coming from? Just them? Or do you think there's some influence, the devil behind them? Yeah, write that. Yeah, I want you to put that in the movie, put that in the show. And it's then exposes what his agenda is. So it's easy to dismiss all of the movies about aliens, all of the, the movies about even creating people and stuff, playing God, but creating sick versions of people that, again, that's what the devil has to do because he can't make people. God did. And the funny thing is, even since then, God hasn't even made a person since Eve. So even people, it's not like when he wants something done, he doesn't just make another person. He finds someone that other people made because he created a. I was just talking to my dad about this. It's sequential. It's like every seed reproduces after its own kind. So he made it once, and then he's able to let it go. Not meaning, I don't mean that he's detached and not interested and not active. That's not true. Like I said in Colossians, he holds all things together, right? In him we live and move and have our being, like in the book of Acts. So he's holding all things together. He is very active and present, but he doesn't need to keep creating things he already created because he already set the system up that every seed reproduces after its own kind. I gave you the material you need. I gave you the capability you need and the responsibility. Be fruitful and multiply is what he said to the first people. And then it's interesting. He had to factory reset the earth with the flood. And then what's the first thing he says to Noah when they get off the boat? Be fruitful and multiply. He's like, this is up to you. You've got the equipment to make the next person. So you go. I'm not making more people. You're going to make more people. I'm not making more dogs. Dogs make more dogs. That type of thing. And so if you're evil, if you're the devil, you understand I can't make any of this because he's also a created being. He was an archangel before he rebelled and got kicked out of heaven. So he has to steal what's already been made and then corrupt it to make his own evil version of it, but he just doesn't have that creative power or authority. So when you see this stuff in the media or in Hollywood, in entertainment, and it's like, hey, yeah, let's make people, not through reproduction. Let's make people by stitching other people together and then try to electrocute it to life or whatever. That to me is an inspiration from hell. I think it exposes what is actually happening. So it gets passed off as this is just fantasy, this is just sci-fi. Is it really? Because there's some real stuff going on. And probably the reason why it's been put into movies and TV shows is what I was saying at the beginning. It's to desensitize people. And it's to get you to, so subconsciously you've already accepted this because you watched it and you consumed it, even if you thought it was weird and said, man, that movie was terrible. I don't ever want to see that again. But you still took it in. And so there's a little seed that's been planted. And then it's very easy. Then it's like, I remember my dad doing this. He made something up. He made up a fact. It wasn't true. And he said it to someone and told them made them believe that it was true. Right. So then it was either months or years later, he brought it up to them again and said, oh, by the way, that isn't true. And the person argued with him. They're like, yeah, it is. I heard that. And he's like, I'm the one who told you that. And I made it up. I'm telling you, it isn't true. And the person had a hard time believing that because it was that little seed just put there. And then the person was like, no, I'm sure that's real. No, it isn't. I made it up. So it's and that's I'm not trying to liken my dad to Satan, but that I feel like that's sort of what's happened with our entertainment is, hey, just take this in. That way, when full disclosure finally comes and we have to roll out this actual massive global deception, people are hook, line, and sinker, no problem. We've been teased the reality of this forever, for decades, which is why I think all of the movies that are depicting aliens, especially when they depict them as friendly, I think it's all predictive programming. It's not like it just started with Steven Spielberg's latest movie. Steven Spielberg's been doing it forever. Anybody remember E.T.? All of he's been the main one doing it, in my opinion. Other people have made alien movies, but maybe that they're part of it too. But some of them do depict them as evil, which is at least better than what Spielberg does. But and he's arguably the best director in Hollywood. Like his movie, I've loved a lot of. He's part of Tintin, and that's an animated movie, and it's amazing. The first one came out in 2011. I have been waiting since 2011 for the second one, and I'm upset about that. But the point is, I think that he was strategically chosen to push this predictive programming, and he's been doing it forever. And it could be because of a deal he made. Some of those people, Katy Perry talked about it openly, that she said she sold her soul to the devil in order to get famous. So people do weird and evil things to get fame and riches. So who knows what Spielberg may have done years ago to get into Hollywood, and then they're like, well, now that you are our like plant or whatever, we made you, you're gonna, whatever message we tell you to put out is what you're gonna put out. And so boom, and most of them are probably Satanists and pedophiles anyway. So again, a tree by its fruit. It's all evil behavior. So I don't think people just with their own imaginations have come up with some of these stories that have been pushed, which because people do have a moral compass, like even though it's been buried pretty deep by a lot of people, there's still like how many people would say they watched The Human Centipede and liked the movie and they're like, oh, that was awesome. I don't know a single person who's I've never seen it and I will never watch it. But if you like poll people, what's the most disturbing, disgusting, awful movie you've ever seen? That one is like up there because it is terrible. So that's an inspiration from hell. And I think that it reveals a real thing that's happening. And here's the thing too. I remember Chuck Missler, who was a great theologian. He said that L.A. Marzulli has kind of sat under him, under his mentorship. Missler's in heaven now, but a lot of what Marzulli has learned has come from Chuck Missler. And he said, he asked him one time, he said, why the breeding program? Why make the hybrids? Like, it's basically just modern day Nephilim. They're just not giants as far as I know. And Missler, he said, without missing a beat, he said, well, Satan's outnumbered 2-1. He's breeding an army. Why is he outnumbered 2-1? Because 1/3 of the angels fell with him, 2/3 stayed in heaven. And that's to say nothing of the church, which is going to be part of, it says he comes back with his saints or his holy ones. And then you'll have the big fight at the very end of things before the final judgment and whatnot. So that I never thought about that as far as like a strategic, like military type of attempt there, that Satan does know he doesn't have the numbers. And here's the thing. I always thought, well, surely he knows how it's going to end for him, right? Like, you don't win in the end. You'll be cast into the lake of fire. You can't win this thing. But here's the thing. As the chief deceiver, maybe he himself is deceived. And he may know what's in Bible prophecy, but he might actually think that he can conjure up something and win. He obviously thought he could kill God in the flesh, and that the cross backfired on him. So he took that L. But I remember Russ Dizdar, who he was actually from Akron, Ohio, and he was like an expert in what we call SRA, which is satanic ritual abuse, because he interviewed a ton of victims, and he also interviewed a bunch of witches, the people doing the SRA. And he said he had a deliverance ministry where he cast devils out of people all the time. But he said he believed, when doing this work and interviewing people, he believed that like the demons themselves were like actually deceived into thinking they could win in the end. He's like, I think they actually think they can. So I'm not making a doctrine out of that. I don't know. But it was just an interesting thing coming from a person who, was into some stuff I'm not into and talk to people in ways that I haven't. But anyway, and the last thing I wanted to get into, because I think it sort of piggybacks off of all of this, if the Greys are in a suit of some kind and it is like organic material rather than something metallic, rather than it being their own skin, then hold on, I'm reading something. Oh, well, I already said this, that people have smelled, like rotting flesh and disgusting organic odors. But it also makes me wonder about, so I mentioned how, you see this stuff in certain books, in certain movies, the Dr. Frankenstein, Dr. Moreau, like making that type of stuff, piecing things together. But it also, and again, because I know it doesn't show it in the Frankenstein movies, but in the book, Mary Shelley alluded to some of that material was also animal material. So here you see a cross species combination. And that's not even, again, that book is very old. I think she wrote it in the 1800s, maybe. But there's a program called CRISPR, CRISPR, and it's used in different places. And what it is basically like gene, or it's like DNA splicing, and they've already combined human and pig like genetics together, and they've created embryos. I am not aware of any of them living very long, but why are you doing that is my question. I don't see any reason why you'd ever need to do that, and I'm sure it all falls under the just the umbrella of, we're looking at longevity here. We just want humans to be able to live longer. We have chronic diseases, and infertility is consuming everybody, right? So we're at the end of our genetic rope, and we're gonna have to maybe step outside of humanity a little bit in order to keep people going. And you already have the elites doing it with young blood transfusions, and then of course adrenochrome. Speaking of one other movie though, before I continue with this, I watched a movie, and I will give it away because it's 21 years old, so I'm not worried about spoiling it for anyone. It's called The Island. It came out in 2005, and we just watched it the other day because my husband's like, "You've never seen this movie?" I'm like, "No, you know that I haven't seen a lot of movies." Okay, so we watched it, and I honestly was almost ready to stop watching. I was like, is this like demonic? Because this looks very gross. And it was gross, but like I also didn't know what was going on yet. So basically what the movie is about is you have a bunch of very wealthy people, the elites of the world, and they paid this company to create clones for them. That way, when they have a health problem, they can go get whatever part they need. So if your heart starts to give out, your clone has a healthy, much younger than yours heart that can then just be transplanted. If you're going to need a new set of eyes, they'll take it out of your clone, and boom, there are your eyes. So the goal is to help these people live ideally forever. Now, here's where the drama came in. Is the owner, or the main doctor running this company, which was creating the clones, he led them all to believe that the clones were not people. They're basically like, they are genetic material, but they're not people. They're not like what is the word, sentient in the way that people are, which wasn't true. The clones they made like were people, in the movie. Obviously, I don't believe you can do that in real life. The only way to make people is to have a baby, in my opinion. Anything you try to create through science or even tech or whatever, or through things like CRISPR, that's the thing, is where the devil and God differ in the many ways they do. Satan cannot create a soul, right? He can't create an actual person with a soul. So even if you try to accomplish this through biological advancements with tech and science, you cannot create something with a soul. That's done that happens when you actually do things the way God Almighty intended, which is reproduction. anyway, so the movie gets dramatic because these clones, they're only like 3 or 4 years old, but they look like adults. And then they get out of this, they realize that they're in like a prison, and it's like this holograph, so it's actually not what it appears to be. They get out, they run away, and they're being chased because they're like, we can't have them going out into the world and talking, because then people will realize they're people, and then they'll see how unethical it is what we're doing here, because we told them they're not people, they're just body parts when they're going to need them, but they're like people. So they end up getting away, and it's great. But why did I bring that up? Movies, predictive programming. Oh, it was because of CRISPR, because of the DNA splicing. So I'm trying to remember who all has that program. I know like China has something, I think like the CDC has it. And basically what they're doing is creating chimeras, which is, it's like one organism that has intact cells from two different species. So you would have human cells that are growing among pig cells. That's what like CRISPR can do. China's got a version of it. I think Japan does as well. They're doing it in certain universities here in the United States. And you got to ask yourself why. And again, it's probably all because it's flying under the umbrella of, we're just looking to help people live longer, and we don't want them to be sick, and da 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 da. In my opinion, though, and I'm not against medical advancements. I'm not like, if I get a headache, I'll take ibuprofen or something. I'm not against like even anti-aging, like I'm all for taking care of your body, right? And if we make some breakthroughs that we didn't know about 20 years ago that help us, I'm not against that. But there comes a point where you do cross a line and you step into not only playing God, but also doing what I believe the devil does, which is to steal what God made and then put things together and then try to create your own sick version of what God created to exist and reproduce naturally. And that's kind of what they're dipping into in science. And part of that has to do with, well, honestly, isn't that kind of what transgender surgeries are? Hey, you don't have this body part, but you feel like you should. We'll cut it off of another person and then make, or we'll even, I know they take their own skin sometimes and try to make something, but that's essentially the same thing. Let's try to like make an artificial human, right? It's just like, it's the same spirit, I think. And it's the inspirations from hell, but it's very old because it happened in Genesis 6. So CRISPR, let me click out of this because it's confusing me. Trying to think if there was anything else that I wanted to cover. Oh, I will real quick. Now, this is also a theory, and so if you think it is nuts, that's totally fine, because I would have agreed with you several years ago. But I don't care. Surprise me. CRISPR. Gosh, I'm losing my train of thought here. Oh, okay. So we see these, I'll pop some up on the screen here. We see these depictions from ancient cultures like this thing, which is a combination of animals, whatever those, I mean, it's got a snake tail, like it's got two heads, or this thing, which has a human head, and then two different animals make up the body, maybe more than two. You have that also being a combination of animals, which is interesting that even some of the things the book of Revelation describes almost sounds like that as well. So when these ancient cultures depicted these things, we've been taught that that was their mythology, right? They depicted those things. Sometimes I think it was more symbolic. So they took different animals that had different strengths and they combined them into one as a sign of ultimate strength, and then made an idol out of it or whatever. That could be the case. Or there's a theory that maybe they found multiple skeletons, like let's say a bird died and then those bones end up in the ground, and then a lion died, and so then when they found the bones, they thought, well, what kind of animal is this, because it looks like it had two heads, and it didn't actually have two heads. It was just two different animals and two sets of bones. I don't think that's likely. Now, were any of these things like this ever real? That's where you start sounding crazy if you say that. But again, is that any more crazy than what they're doing now with CRISPR? Putting together chimeras, which is two different organisms together. It's not any more crazy than that. And it's also, these same cultures that depicted these things also depicted real animals. So they knew it's not like they didn't know what real animals looked like. They intentionally were depicting something that was multiple animals put together. So here's the thing too, and this is where you do have to go outside the Bible, but this comes from other ancient books or written accounts, which are considered to be real, historical, just extra biblical texts. They wrote about the Nephilim, but they said that they were, not only did they defile humans, but they also defiled the animals. And so here's the thing, if fallen angels could have a sexual relationship with humans and create a giant, what happens when a giant has a sexual relationship with an animal? The giant was only half human and then half fallen angel. So could reproduction happen there as well? Probably, because the crazier thing already happened, which was angels and humans. So if that happened, was something like one of these things born that existed at one time? I would say possibly. I'm not going to make a doctrine out of it, but I'd say possibly stranger things have happened. And here's the thing too, again, just to go back to what is the source of all this stuff. If you've learned anything about Hinduism, no disrespect to any Hindu people, but Hinduism is demonic, like very demonic. And that's why people, who think they can do yoga and there's no influence in it. Yoga is literally designed to open you up to certain Hindu gods, which are just demonic spirits. So there's no such thing as Christian yoga. You should stay away from it. But they have all of these different gods. One of them is Ganesha, which is like a person with a bunch of arms and an elephant's head. And they have multiple weird things like that in the Hindu culture. But it's not just Hinduism. You also have like stuff like this, which is a person with a goat head. And there are other cultures as well. Egypt, they depicted some of the same stuff too. So my point in all of this is, when you start to see the parameters that God set, which is humans reproduce with other humans, and that's it. When you start to see something go outside those parameters, where you see the same behavior, there is the same spirit. So it could be animals and people, which we know is bestiality, which is evil. I don't think every person should know that. In fact, if you did that in the Bible, you got killed. They put the person to death as well as the animal, because that's how evil it was. So you could do that. If you have fallen angels and humans, same thing. You've stepped outside the parameters of human to human. If you have fallen angel to animal, that shouldn't happen either. It should be animal with its own kind. That is God's design. God's design is for every seed to reproduce after its own kind. So that includes the seed of people. What happens when you put a seed in a woman? You get another person that comes out of that. Animals, same thing, however they reproduce. So when you see that broken, when you see that transgressed, those rules have been just blown through. That's demonic behavior, right? Which is why, like, trans people, God help you, you need to get delivered. Okay. Once you get delivered, you can be normal. I promise you. There are tons of stories out there of people who were trans this, and then they got born again, and now they're back to living the way that they should have been, back to being a person, not a confused trans something. So I know that was a very long way of getting at what I started with, which was the little grays being biological suits that actually have a demon in them. And the thing is, I don't think demons have to have a body to be able to interact like on this earth or around people. When I was in college, gosh, I could write a book on what happened. It was insane. I like, it was crazy. There was actually my best friend who was demon possessed, like without a doubt, probably more than one demon. And given what I knew about her past, it all made sense. Like if she wasn't demon possessed, I would have been surprised. She had issues. But anyway, she showed me, I saw this with my own two eyes. So she started having nightmares, and she told me that she was seeing two different, what you would just describe them as demons. One was like red, one was like black, and they were tormenting her. She was scared to go to sleep. She was like staying in my room and like trying to stay awake, and it was like crazy. But she showed me, she said in her nightmares she was getting attacked by them, and they were scratching her, they were clawing at her. And I'm telling you, I saw on her stomach, she had little scratches all over her stomach, like it's very thin scratches, like almost if you took a razor blade and scratched yourself somewhat lightly. Scratches all over her stomach. Right here on her arm, above her elbow, she had the word run scratched into her skin. And then the worst thing was she had a pentagram below her belly button. I saw all of this. So that being said, I don't think demons have to be in a body or in a suit to be able to interact in our world on the earth. But for the purposes of abducting people, maybe they do, because they're like going and taking someone out of their room, taking them to what people say is a ship, and then they lay them on a table, and then it's usually the grays, I think, that are performing the experiments on people, that are taking genetic material and stuff like that. So maybe when it comes to that more involved stuff, they do have to be in some kind of body, which means they probably could also operate through a person that they're like possessing. So I know it's weird. I know it, I said it would be uncomfortable. It's disgusting. It's disturbing. And yet, in my opinion, that's what's happening. Because again, we're for people who don't want to go there, you don't want to think about it because it's all weird. Read the book of Revelation. Like, read the book of Revelation. There is no way that you can read that and then try to maintain a worldview that like none of that stuff is real or ever going to happen. It's going to get, and there are people who dismiss it because they think it's all symbolic, which I don't. If you stop taking the Bible literally, you're going to have problems like very, very quickly. The Bible is a very literal book, unless it says specifically that this was a vision or, like, but it is literal. And so it's going to go down on this earth during the time of the tribulation. There's going to be weird stuff that people are going to see. There's going to be weird stuff that's done to people, physical, torment, pain, all kinds of stuff. So to push all of this stuff off and say, no, that's too insane, that can't be real, blah, 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 blah. Read your Bible. Especially if you're a person who believes in it. You believe that a donkey talked. That's pretty crazy. You believe an axe head floated. That's pretty crazy. That defies physics, the laws of nature. You believe in a virgin birth. I do. You believe God came in the flesh. I mean, you already believe stuff that already sounds crazy, but it isn't, because it all happened. So when it comes to this stuff, just because it's new to you does not mean that it's too crazy to be like, well, let's just look at what's happening, which is why I say I'm willing to look at what's reported, what people say in their interviews, listen to the researchers who've been studying this stuff for decades. And I don't honestly, I don't listen to people like Stephen Greer because he is in the new age and like he's obviously deceived. I don't care about what his take is on something. Anyone who's listening to demons, I don't want to know what you think. So I listen to only people who are Christians who are going to look at all of this stuff through the lens of the Bible. And so far, none of this stuff violates scripture. And in my opinion, what would violate scripture would be aliens being real extraterrestrial beings from another part of the universe. And some people say that doesn't violate scripture at all. In my opinion, it does, because there's no evidence for that in the Bible. When you read the Bible, you see it's about earth and it's about humans. And that's where God's heart is. That's who Jesus died for. Earth is where Jesus came the first time, and earth is where he's coming back to. Jerusalem, the Mount of Olives, like specifically. So if you're going to tell me no, there could be other created intelligent life out there, unless they have their own Bible, I don't think so. And especially if they're going to come here and interact with humanity and the Bible didn't tell us, I don't think that works. I don't. Now, what the Bible does tell us is what I believe we're seeing, which is a seed war. In Genesis 3:15, this is the first messianic prophecy in the Bible, when he curses the serpent and he says, the seed of the woman, I'll put enmity between your seed and the seed of the woman. So right there this is the third chapter in, we see the dragon's gonna have a seed. How exactly does that work? I don't know. He has a seed and the woman has a seed, which we know is mankind, which Jesus was, the Son of God, was born into and became. And he says there's going to be this conflict, and you're going to strike his heel, but he's going to crush your head. So that tells us about the cross. But then we see Genesis 6, just 3 chapters later, the actual seed manifests. We see the actual seed of the serpent here, which, again, because he couldn't create his own the way God can, he had to steal from what God made and make his own sick version of it, which was the Nephilim, the hybrid beings, which aren't human, and they're not fully fallen angel either, although that's the camp they fall into, because they're not made in the image of God. They're not part of his creation. So there's your seed war. And then Daniel 2:43, which is a prophetic end times book, he wrote, their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to them. Well, what seed? We know what the seed of men is. That's humanity. But what's this other seed? Well, the only other seed we know about is the seed of the serpent, the seed of the dragon, the seed of Satan. So and Jesus said it. He said, hey, it'll be in the days of the Son of Man, it'll be as it was in the days of Noah. And so some people say, well, yeah, but that's about eating and drinking and marrying and being given in marriage, and ignoring the fact that the end is coming and destruction is coming. Yeah, all of that's true. But there's also something else really, really big that happened in the days of Noah with the fallen angels and the daughters of men and the Nephilim. Kind of a very big deal that happened. So if he said it'll be as it was in the days of Noah, I think you would expect the same behavior. All of it. So that means there's got to be a breeding program, which explains, this is why too, people can throw out their alien narratives all they want. They can throw them all out there. Oh, they're just from the Pleiades. They're just from Zeta Reticuli. They're just extraterrestrial. They're interested in Earth. You can throw out any narrative that you want, but there's literally only one explanation that can check every single box. Every box, and it literally is the biblical explanation. Why? Because it explains why their behavior is evil. Because if you're going to go with, I think they're friendly aliens, you need to explain why they're abducting people. Why are they implanting them? Why do they rape people? Why are they stealing the fetus? Explain why the cattle mutilations. That's not really considered good, right? You need to explain the bad behavior then, if you want us to believe they're just friendly aliens out there. And I know some people think, well, some are good and some are bad. That's retarded, with all due respect. So if you want to be able to explain good versus evil, you need the Bible for that. If you want to be able, what I think is going to happen too is they'll, once this full disclosure comes, they'll take credit for things that have never been explained. Like everyone has questions about the pyramids. They'll take credit for the pyramids. Stonehenge, they'll take credit for that. Sacsayhuaman in Peru, those megalithic walls with the huge stones, take credit for that. What else am I missing? Even small things like the Voynich manuscript. No one knows what the language is, who wrote it. Take credit for that. That way, whatever is hidden in Antarctica, take credit for that. What are the faces on Mars? Are there pyramids on Mars? Take credit for that. So everything that has ever been unexplained, they can take credit for. So that way it's a very, very convincing narrative and explain away the rapture of the church. They've already done that in New Age circles. Barbara Marciniak, who wrote the Bringers of the Dawn book, this is channeled information. She thinks they're Pleiadians. We know they're demons, but this is channeled information. It says there's the possibility that many people will disappear in a single day or in an afternoon, and it's because they were in the way of the earth changes and they didn't fit here any longer. So boom, if all of a sudden a bunch of people just disappear, there's a new age demonic explanation for it. So there's a counterfeit. Every time there's something authentic, the devil has a counterfeit for it. So you have the new age explanation, the Stephen Greers of the world, Barbara Marciniak, which I believe that's what the Antichrist explanation will involve, because you can't let the Bible be true. You can't let God be the creator. You can't let the rapture be what the Bible says it is. You can't admit they're demons and fallen angels. So you have to come up with another narrative. But if you accept the biblical narrative, it's the only one that explains everything with no lies, because the devil's a liar. He'll produce a bunch of lies. And I'm sure scripture will come under attack. I think it already has, but it'll come under further attack. The Bible's very close to true, but not quite. Not quite. Almost is, but not quite. That you watch that'll happen. And honestly, it may come with discoveries. I would not be a bit surprised. I bet you they're going to produce artifacts, manuscripts, things that have been buried, supposedly, that will challenge the Bible or change it just enough so that you can throw out, God as the creator. You can throw out Jesus as the only way to the Father. You can throw all of that out. You can maintain a little bit some of the nice things about Christianity, right? But because that's basically what Islam already does. They recognize Jesus was a prophet and a healer, but he just wasn't the Son of God to them. So you can keep some things, but you just cannot keep it. He's the way, the truth, and the life. That is what you've got to attack and be able to throw out. And if aliens show up and they start to take credit for all of these things that I believe can be explained, if giants were real and they spread out all over the place. This is why I think they've obfuscated all of the giant bones that have been unearthed from here in America, in South America or Latin America. All of the written accounts of them. Abraham Lincoln talked about seeing the bones of the giants. I think it was Christopher Columbus sailing in the 1500s. I think it was him. He wrote about seeing not bones, like actual giants that were here. Where do you think all the mounds came from? Like, come on. Even Native American people have admitted they didn't build them. They're like, these were here when we got here. We didn't make them. And then they all have stories. I shouldn't say all, but a lot of them have stories of red-haired cannibalistic giants. 6 fingers, double rows of teeth, many of them, which is exactly how the whistleblowers described the Kandahar giant. Red hair, cannibal, 6 fingers, double rows of teeth. I mean, why cover it up if they're just like, if it's part of history, why would you cover it up? Unless it's because it supports what the Bible tells us. Giants were real, but they weren't good. They were a hybrid evil offspring of an ungodly thing that I think is what got the earth flooded. So you have to offer a counterfeit if you don't want people to believe the truth. But if you accept the truth, it has answers for all this, which is why, everyone talks about the Book of Enoch, which I have it, but I I tried to read it and I got bored, to be honest. I don't think you need to read it to get the full truth. There might be some interesting stuff in it, but I think it's not in the Bible for a reason. And I'm not going to say it should be in there. There's probably useful information in there, so I think it's fine if you read it, but I don't think that you actually have to in order to come to the same conclusion like that I'm at, that just accept what happened in Genesis 6 and interpret what you see through the lens of the Bible. What's left out? Like nothing. Even UFOs. Why if they're demons do they need a vehicle? Again, if they're demons, why do they need us to be in a body to do what they want? There are rules of physics and laws of nature that govern the earth that we live on. And so in order to do what you want to do here, yeah, you might need some external armor, some a vehicle to think about it. If you're taking a physical person, you might need to put them in something. I don't know that people just the little things snap their fingers and people disappear. There's obviously they're manipulating physics somehow when they take them, but if you're going to do experiments on them, yeah, you might need a place to take them and a way to transport them. I don't think that's hard to believe. Makes a lot of sense to me. So, and I'm not going to tell anyone what to think. You make up your own mind. And if anything is too uncomfortable for you, then don't look into it. Don't. If you have avoided the subject because it's disturbing or weird, or you don't want to get deceived or something, then don't look into it. Don't do anything that is going to violate your conscience. Don't. I personally am interested in this stuff, but it's not new to me either. I started following it in maybe 2014, which is not that long, but we are talking 12 years. So when it finally started to go mainstream, where now the White House is making announcements, you have people like Marco Rubio, who's one of the most serious, he doesn't seem like a sensational person. You got him in that, what they come up with, the documentary that came out, I think last year. It's at the point where it's very hard to ignore this stuff, and it kind of demands an explanation, which is why I encourage people to look to the Bible for your explanation, because the answers are in there, and everything falls into place once you understand that. You have to get over thinking the spirit realm and then our physical bodies, the physical realm we live in. Stop thinking there's no overlap. The Bible shows us there is. In multiple places, both Old and New Testament, there's overlap. There's contact there. So if you understand that, then, and understand Satan is a deceiver, he's a liar, he can masquerade as an angel of light. All of these different religions like Hinduism and stuff, and the people with the channeling spirits and whatnot, understand that he has multiple. Again, everything is there. Everything is false and everything is a lie except one thing. Which is why do you think Jesus said the way is broad that leads to destruction, and then there's one narrow way? Because there's literally one thing that's true. One. Out of all the religions of the world, out of all the worldviews, out of all the explanations for everything, there's one that's true. One. And that's the person of Jesus Christ being the way, the truth, and the life, the only way to the Father. It is the only way. The one way out of everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got a worldview. And yet there's one thing that's right. One. Think about that. So the devil doesn't have to get you to sell your soul to him. He doesn't have to get you to start sacrificing goats to him. All he needs you to do is accept anything but the truth. The one thing. He's like, if I can get, that person wants to do Hinduism, great. They want to do Islam, great. They want to be an atheist and not believe in anything, great. You want to be just confused where you're not really sure, up in the air, great. It doesn't matter. He can give you anything to distract you from the one thing you have to know and believe and accept. And all the other ways lead to destruction. So that's why I say the importance is to go to the Bible for your answers, because it contains the truth, the one way. And if you don't believe that, and if you're willing to take a gamble on that, You got some, I don't, that's terrifying. You're really willing to gamble on that for eternity. Even if you think there's this much of a chance that it's true, you're willing to bet your soul, your eternal soul, on that. Why? I would at the very least look into it. And if you want to know why is Christianity so widespread? Why has it lasted so long? Why do so many people believe it and die on that hill? Look into why. Look into how many manuscripts there are. Look into what the disciples had to be willing to risk in order just to keep their story. I mean, if I was making it up about the resurrection of Jesus, if I was making it up and they said, we're going to kill you if you don't fess up and stop spreading this lie, I would fess up and stop spreading the lie. If I knew I was making it up, I sure wouldn't be persecuted and die for it. That's for sure. I'd be like, yeah, I made it up. Don't kill me. I don't want to get whipped. I made it up. I mean, and that's just one thing. There's so much there to make everyone who's honest, even atheist historians who are not at all interested in Christianity, even they admit Jesus was definitely a real person. If you want to debate whether he was the Son of God, you can debate that if you want to, but you can't. To deny that he existed, you are in outright denial of historical fact. And look at the number of prophecies that he fulfilled. It's like over 300. If you've ever seen the chart of the cross references in the Bible, it's like an infinite number of lines. It looks like a ribbon of sound. There are so many cross references. Like, at least if you're going to shut the door on something completely, do yourself the service of looking into it and then just give it a chance. And here's the thing too. The difference between Christianity and like every other religion is this, that we have, we're not going to take you to the tomb of the founder of our religion because he's alive. So it's not just believing in a person who did exist. It's a person who is alive, and you have an active, literal, real relationship with that person now. And the thing is, our God is love. All the other religions, it's like, my pastor describes it this way. It's like the IRS. If I just do what's right and I do enough and I give my offerings or whatever, then they'll leave me alone. If I just check the boxes, then they'll leave me alone. Christianity is not like that. You have a loving Father who desires a relationship with you, made you in his image, paid a tremendous price for you to send his son to die in your place to get you reconciled back to him. None other are like that. So that's also what you're passing up. And if you're worried about anything you would give up to become a Christian, I can tell you from personal experience, I was like an alcoholic. I loved drinking. I drank by myself at all times of the day, which is how you know you have a problem. I thought about what that's going to look like to give that up. I was a pathological liar. I was a narcissist. I was extremely self-centered, extremely prideful. And I can tell you now, that was in 2014. I can tell you now, nothing that I gave up do I even want anymore. I actually was on the phone with my husband today, and he was just kidding, but he's like, do you want some rum? Do you want some whiskey or whatever? And knowing my answer would be, he wasn't buying alcohol. He doesn't drink anymore either. But I honestly said this. I was like, I'm so thankful that that's no longer like a thing I even buy or desire to buy. I have literally no desire for it anymore. So there's I promise you, there is nothing you will give up if you're like, man, if I become a Christian, I can't do this anymore. I promise you, he does such a cleansing work on the inside of you that every like sinful thing you loved at one point, you don't even have a taste for it anymore. You don't even want it. In fact, if anything, you'll see the ugliness of what that thing was. It'll expose that sin is nothing but slow death. That's what it is. It's dressed up death, because sin, when it's fully grown, brings forth death. And knowing this thing that you keep doing, that you keep taking in, it's killing you. It's actually killing you. And there's no friendship in it. It's of the devil, and he hates your guts. If you think God's mad at you, I promise you, God is nice. God is love. God is wonderful. The devil is the one who hates you, and he's awful, and you should hate him too and want nothing to do with him. And if anything, you shouldn't want to go where he's going. And you've been given a free way out. He doesn't have the opportunity to get a pass, but you do. So just look, see what the Bible has to say. Listen to people like L.A. Marzulli, born again, spirit-filled Christian, and he gets into all this weird stuff. He'll talk about the UFOs. He'll talk about the aliens. He'll talk about the cryptid sightings and all that stuff. He gives people a platform to let them talk. So you don't have to, and if you feel convicted, then don't, like I said, don't look into this stuff. Don't listen. But if you still want to be able to be well-rounded and be awake, that's why I keep track of this stuff, because I want to be awake and I want to know what my enemy is doing. I think that's the best way to be prepared and to make sure you don't get deceived. I'm not gonna go to sleep in a war zone. I'm going to stay awake and know where my enemy's at. So if I think you're cooking up this alien narrative that's going to feed into this great deception, try to explain away the rapture of the church and everything else, I would like to know what you're doing. And also, but I want there to be an answer for people when it comes to every aspect of these subjects. So like the abductions, like even cattle mutilations, any of that stuff you get into, there's an explanation for it if you will accept what the Bible shows you. So if you're unfamiliar with that book, you are in for a wild ride if you start reading it. It's not, I wouldn't start in like Leviticus and what's most boring in my opinion, but I promise you, you'll find, and it, because it's not just a book full of words, it's living and active. Jesus is the Word made flesh. That, get into that book, it will change you, and it'll be amazing. You will be full of joy, be full of peace. You can't put a price on the peace you get when you know you're in right relationship with God, and you can actually say, it is well with my soul. There's nothing like it. There is nothing like it. I've never felt better, ever. And it eliminates all fear too, because it's like, you already know how it's going to end. I know how this thing ends, and I'm on the winning team. And also, I didn't even have to fight. I'm more than a conqueror. I don't know how that works. I'm not even entirely sure what that means, but it sounds like somebody already conquered something for me, and I'm like living in the blessing that is, whatever that even looks like. So which is why, people get triggered. They leave their comments. That's nonsense. I can't believe you believe in that. Bro, you're literally the one I feel sorry for. I can't believe you don't believe it. And I can only imagine the misery of a life without the truth, without the peace, without the joy, without the love. Like, and if you want to try to talk me out of it, buddy, that's a lost cause. I've experienced way too much at this point. It's like the longer I live, the further it is, the more real it becomes, the more true it becomes. The more I see, the more I experience, the more I'm like, this is it. This is it. So, for the love of God, please get hold of a Bible. If you don't have one, you can send me a message. I'll just put these up actually. Any one of these platforms where I exist, including TikTok, which I have not added to this list for whatever reason, you could send me a DM or an email. I would be happy to send you a Bible. Or if you're just interested in going to church, you've never been, and you don't know where to go, tell me. You don't have to give me your address, but if you tell me in the general area where you live, I'd be happy to help you find one. A good Bible-believing church in your vicinity. It's never been more important than now to not roll the dice with your eternity, because the time is very short. And then if you want to support Amber Alert Podcast, those are the ways that you can. Or if you would like to be a sponsor, that type of situation, have some kind of partnership, you can do that. You could email me there or send me a message about that, and we could iron out the details from there. All right. If you, like I was saying, if you like part one, which these episodes are parts 1, 2, and 3. I don't really like part 1 that much because it's news. Part 2 is always a conspiracy theory or something supernatural. I can't help but get into the Bible because it's relevant to literally everything. But part 3, which I will start, I think I'm going to wait until 8 o'clock. I'm not going to start part 3 until 8 o'clock just because my husband's making me some food. So I'm going to give myself a chance to eat. 8 o'clock, I'll start part 3. We're going to get into the Bible, which strangely enough, normally they're not really related, but part 3 is actually going to be semi-related to this that I got into in part 2 because we were talking about imagination, and we're going to actually get into identity and even names, but how this ties in with modern psychology. So the Bible told us these things thousands of years ago, and psychology may not go by the same terms, but essentially they have found these things to be true in psychology. So the importance of identity that we'll get out of the Bible, that will be part 3. So that'll be at 8 o'clock. If you want to join, it'll be a new live video, and we will get into the Bible there. All right. I will see you there. God bless you and goodbye.